Hello everyone, I hope that you have had a wonderful time with loved ones this festive season. In this video I'm taking a closer look at the updated dash attack for Assault and Space Marine 2 with a lot of scrutiny and a heavy measure of dissatisfaction. The dash attack is not new, as you might be misled to believe. Since launch you could always dash into a sprinting attack, but prior to patch 11 the animation was quite janky, as you would perform a dash, briefly stop, and then enter the sprinting attack animation. In the current patch, patch 11, this animation was smoothed out. However, what remains the same then as now is that the dash attack remains utterly useless. Prior to the current patch, the dash attack damage was pitiful because it shared the exact same damage multiplier as the regular sprinting attack. And it's important to note here as well that the dash attack is the assault specific extension of the regular sprinting attack. The damage multiplier is 0.5x for the sprinting attack, which is half that of a light attack. Using the base relic block Thunderhammer as the example weapon here, the damage you deal on a sprinting attack is 14 points of damage. Prior to patch 11, the dash attack would also deal 14 points of damage. Now in the current patch the developers have increased the damage by 50% according to their patch notes. This would take the attack value to 21. But testing this out in game, it's actually 28, which means it's a 100% increase, which would equate to a 1x, and you are simply spending a charge to deal the same amount of damage as you would with a regular light attack. Appalling is perhaps the best PG description for this than anything harsher that I would like to say. Assault is the class with a jetpack, yet throughout the entire PvE lifecycle, the jetpack has never been treated as a mobility or evasion tool first and foremost, nor was it ever treated as a method of ascension, elevating to different levels within the operation, nor for engagement control. Instead, players have been trained consistently since launch through the material benefits of the ground pound and through the perk composition and layouts of the dashing perks and the ground pound perks to conserve any and all jetpack charges for ground pound attacks and ground pound attacks alone. When every action with the jetpack costs a full charge, and with ground pounds being the only action that provides a tangible result outside of any perks elevating it to have any substance at all, it's no mystery why ground pounds are first and foremost at the front of any dialogue or conversation around assault jetpack usage. Why would you spend a full charge to get a perfect jetpack dash to achieve the same result and outcome as a regular perfect dodge? You get the same gunstrike marker at the end of it. There's no additional effect unless you apply perks to it. But to get the most meaningful result out of this loop, you will need to level your assault to the max level of 25 to unlock the perk which allows you to cycle those charges, in theory, infinitely if you know your timings. That's one perk that allows assault more uptime with its ability. Compare this with the tactical, who at level 6, in the very first row, level 6, has access to battle focus, which applies its ability of the Auspex scan through simple actions of parrying and blocking. You don't need to press your ability button to use your Auspex anymore, except for certain threats. Then there's the Vanguard, who at level 9 can use its ability to restore its ability by grappling and executing enemies that have a third of their HP remaining. But for the poor old assault to want to cycle its ability for a fun application of the jetpack, constantly dashing around and feeling mobile, it must first wait until it reaches level 25, its max level, before it can achieve this gameplay loop. But level 25 is quite problematic, as many of you will know, because that is at the point in which you can prestige your class. Now, against the grain of developer thinking, prestiging, although framed as being optional, is quite the opposite for a lot of players, as the prestige perks for a lot of classes, some are quite coveted. For example, Bulwark's ability restoration through blocking range damage with its shield, or the Tactical's headshot damage multiplier upon consecutive headshots. And for Assault specifically, there is a great perk which provides knockback and knockdown resistance after perfect parries, blocks or dodges, which is the only real perk for this effect on the Assault class. And so by the time you get to level 25 and you can unlock commitment to begin this fun gameplay loop of dashing, you will almost always prestige. And for those players who do take this pathway, which is most likely a lot of them, they will not unlock commitment. They will start afresh at level 1. And from level 1 through to level 25, they will continue doing what they always do, and that is ground pounds. Because why would you spend a charge to dash to get the same result as a regular dodge? Why would you spend a charge to dash out of danger when you could have spammed the dodge roll? Why would you spend a charge to dash into combat with the, in quotation marks, new dash attack, when that same damage output after spending a charge could be achieved by simply walking up to a warrior and light attacking them? No charge at all spent. What feels most impactful with charge economy are ground pound attacks, and thus any other application of the jetpack cannot stand against the impact and the results of a ground pound attack. Everything else is just opportunity cost. And it shouldn't be this way. You have the jetpack, you should be mobile, fluid, evading, being hypermobile. And in my guides I try to encourage you to use your jetpack more liberally, because you can still perform these actions. You just always associate it with losing out on a ground pound. And for many players, if you're not spending that charge on a ground pound, it's not worth using at all. And who can blame them, since ground pounds have the most tangible results? In the current patch, the developers, by introducing this updated dash attack, I suspect they are trying to promote more liberal use of the jetpack for dashing. But this current implementation just does not provide any incentive. It holds no weight against the tangible results of a ground pound. 28 points of damage, with no other mechanical benefit integrated into this action. There is, however, a glimmer of hope, as in the recent Community Stroke Developer Update for December, the developers had a look at the more popular suggestions on their Ideas Stroke Forums board, one of which was a suite of suggestions by the user Thorn, pertaining to improving the dashing side of jetpack utilization. So it is on their radar, and they have said that they will look into it further. But in order to keep their gaze on this issue, I would encourage you all to check the link in the description to this forum post by Thorn and upvote it, comment on it, keep the discussion alive so the developers can see that Assault dash utilization of the jetpack is still something that we want to see, something tangible, material, not just 100% damage increase to a regular sprinting attack, which has problems all of its own. And this implementation has done quite the opposite of build diversity with jetpack decision making, and falls short. Quite literally falls short, as I'll explore later. Just like how a jetpack dodge is the assault-specific extension of the perfect dodge mechanic, the dash attack is the assault-specific extension of the regular sprinting attack. You initiate a dash using a jetpack charge, and during the animation you input an attack. The only attack you can perform again is the sprinting attack. You cannot dash into a heavy attack or a light attack. It's always going to be your sprinting attack. For the Thunderhammer, that's Pommel Smash. For the Power Sword, that's either Whirl Slash or Air Thrust, depending on your stance. For the Power Axe, that's Overhead Strike, etc. You cannot dash attack a Ground Slam or a Power Whirl or a Whirlwind Strike. Only a sprinting attack. But because that's a sprinting attack and you can follow it up with a heavy attack or any other attack in the chain, you can expedite that process, or what is quite literally save a modicum of time by dash attacking a sprinting attack to then go into your heavier attacks. But at its base level, the dash attack is just a sprinting attack with a fancy animation. Much like how the jetpack dodge is just a fancily animated dodge for assault. And the damage, well, to quote UK drill artist Castillo,
"It's not looking good, Bev. It's not looking good."
I've already explored this briefly in the introduction, but I'll dedicate this section now to look at it more deeply. But the attack is pitiful. If we take the Relic Block Thunderhammer with no perks at all on the weapon and no perks affecting damage on class, the light swing damage value is 28 points, which is a 1x multiplier, or coined as base damage. The sprinting attack deals 14 points of damage. Makes sense because it's 0.5x or half that of a light attack. The assault specific extension of sprinting attacks, the dash attack, is claimed to deal 50% more damage, but as I've said, it actually deals 100% more damage, which equates to the same damage multiplier as a light attack, as your light attack. That very same attack not costing a charge whatsoever. To reiterate, a full charge is spent to deal 28 points of damage with your base Relic Block Thunderhammer. Now you can of course increase your total base damage by applying your class and weapon perks that increase damage, so perpetual strength, knowledge of the enemy, etc. But you cannot disregard the fact that your dash attacks have the same damage multiplier of 1x as your regular light attacks, so you would be spending a charge to deal the same amount of damage as your light attack. And that's not credit-worthy in any sense. And if we go back to the base Relic Block Thunderhammer just dealing 28 points of damage, a fun fact is that Gaunts, your little minions, Tyranid minions, on Ruthless difficulty all the way up to Absolute have 40 hit points, meaning this attack, where you spend a full charge, won't even kill a Gaunt. A full charge spent on attack which can't even kill a Gaunt. How about that? The dash attack damage value is pitiful. I've explored this quite thoroughly now. But with damage aside, the dash attack also has mechanical shortcomings. There are functional weaknesses that do not provide any meaningful, tangible benefit to performing this attack, spending a full charge to perform this attack compared to ground pounds. I can rattle them off now. The first one is that performing this attack does not guarantee stagger or interruption, unlike the Bulwark's Shield Rush, which costs no charge, or the Vanguard's Grapnel, which does. It also struggles to cancel reinforcement calls. And you would think that propelling yourself forward with Prometheum would stagger and interrupt enemies calling out for reinforcements. You will also still take damage performing this attack if you perform it outside of perfect dodge windows. So if you, for example, initiate combat with this attack against a Devourer shooting at you, you will still take damage. And remember how I said that this attack quite literally falls short. Well, the effective travel distance of this attack is shorter in the current patch due to the animation smoothing. So now the dash attack sits alongside the Jetpack Perfect Dash as an assault specific extension of a regular mechanic that requires a charge to be spent but offers no inherent utility or benefit unless you give it some filling through perks. If we look at the Jetpack Perfect Dash, for example, it provides the exact same gunstrike marker and gunstrike damage as you would get from a regular perfect dodge. It has no innate benefit beyond the fun looking animation and the distance you gain. And of course, it's got a full charge cost with it to perform, whereas the regular perfect dodge doesn't have that risk. Yes, you do have perks such as Wings of Flame, Aerial Grace and Commitment to make the Jetpack Dash more appealing, but without them the mechanic is, and it pains me to say this as someone who mains Assault and has done for close to 2,000 hours, it pains me to say that the Jetpack Dash is inferior to the regular perfect dodging mechanic, as you don't risk wasting a charge and you get the same base results as you would get with a Jetpack Dash. The dash attack shares a similar issue. It delivers no unique mechanical advantage or benefit, no improved setup potential, and there's no substantial damage dealt. It's not all doom and gloom though, as the dash attack does have synergy with the Jetpack Perfect Dashing. As this attack can be performed after a dash, you can chain this assault specific extension of sprinting attacks in melee combat after performing a perfect dodge with a jetpack. The problem here is this. So let's look at this at a base level. You're carefully paying attention to enemy attacks to time your perfect dodge, but you time it to press your jetpack ability button instead, which at base, remember, no perks, does nothing but provide distance and a gunstrike marker. You can now, with the jetpack dash attack, or well, you could always do this, but there's tiny marginal benefit now in terms of damage. You can convert that reactive fancy dodge into a proactive fancy sprinting attack by pressing the attack button after your fancy dodge to end the dodge animation with a fancy sprinting attack. All of this costing a full charge, remember. Whereas you could also just perform a regular perfect dodge and then enter into a regular sprinting attack with no fear of wasting a full charge at all. Now, this fancily animated jetpack dash into a dash attack can be elevated and given some substance with perks. So you can deal damage on trajectory with Wings of Flame and buff your sprinting attack damage output and follow-up attacks by 30% with Aerial Grace, and chain this infinitely with Commitment at level 25 with each successful jetpack dodge. But this 30% increase on your sprinting attack is just 30% for 28, which is 8 rounded down for a bump up to about 36 points of damage before chaining into an actual hard-hitting light or heavy attack that will see a more significant increase from your Aerial Grace perk. So to have this fancy dash into a dash attack have any substance, you've got to have Wings of Flame, you've got to have Aerial Grace Commitment, that's 3 perks. You can take the new dash attack ones as well, which is Act of Attrition for the damage taken debuff, and also Winged Fury, which doubles your sprinting attack damage if you use your jetpack to do it. That's 5 whole perks to give this combination any tangible value. That's 3 perks to give the regular jetpack dodge mechanic any tangible benefit over the regular dodge. And 2 to make the new dash attack, which is being or wanting to be encouraged to be adopted by players to use, for the base mechanic to have any meaning, because the mechanics themselves without perks don't have any value at all. But even these two perks for dash attacks, they're not any good. And I will requote Costello here again.
It's not looking good, Bev. It's not looking good.
Some players suggest the dash attack is fine because perks like Winged Fury or Active Attrition improve it. There's two things I have to say about that. Firstly, if you need perks to flesh out a mechanic because it has nothing going for it at base, then that's just a poorly designed mechanic. It's like decorating a dull level with extra collectibles, hoping players will not notice that the layout is boring. Perks should elevate a good mechanic and allow player choice in how they can shape that mechanic to their playstyle, not act as life support for a bad one. Secondly, and quite simply, the perks aren't that great. Let's look at the problem child perk in column 1, Winged Fury. This perk doubles sprinting and dash attack damage, and also triggers a small AoE explosion with a cooldown of 5 seconds. So with this perk, your regular sprinting attacks become equivalent to light attacks. Now this is a big problem because you run the very real and common risk of killing a gaunt when you try to set up a gunstrike opportunity to restore your armor. As for your dash attacks, they will increase to a 2x multiplier, so around 56 damage for your base relic Thunderhammer with no perks affecting damage at all. It's a bit naff considering that the same charge can deal so much more damage to a single target with a ground pound attack. And that AoE damage with a 5-second cooldown, well, I've done some boots on the ground testing here as I'm a console player without access to the testing arena mod. And if we take that 2x multiplier of 28 points to a total of 56, we keep that in mind. If you look at these damage values at the mission end screen of my multiple in-game tests, you can see the number 76 pop up quite frequently. This means the AoE damage that you deal with a 5-second cooldown equates to 20 points. 20 points of damage. Versus the Bulwark's intimidating aura, which procs from a perfect parry or a perfect block and deals 120 damage at base. But in game, it's actually 180 because you apply the damage taken debuff from your parry or blocks. And this also has the very same cooldown of 5 seconds. So it's 20 points versus an effective 180, and it doesn't cost the Bulwark an ability charge at all to perform. Winged Fury AoE, circa 20 points of damage. The problem gets worse though. Remember when I said you could oftentimes kill gaunts? This AoE explosion of 20 points added on to your single sprinting attack damage value that has been increased by Winged Fury, which will be 28. You add the two together, that's 48. And if you remember, gaunts have 40 HP. So your regular sprinting attacks can oftentimes kill gaunts. Screw you over when you're trying to set up a gunstrike to restore your armor, which is very important on Assault, as armor is your main way of survivability. Winged Fury also exists in the same column as Overcharge and Armor Reinforcement, both significantly more impactful and useful in both general and high-level play. I also don't understand the developers' emphasis on buffing the regular sprinting attacks. Everyone uses sprinting attacks to proc gunstrike markers for armor restoration, or they use it to enter into their heavy attacks with their Thunderhammer, for example. Not only this, but the existence of these two perks to encourage dash attacks to also proc from the regular sprinting attacks just undermines using the dash attack mechanic. To put this in a more blunt way, imagine if Wings of Flame dealt burn damage from your regular perfect dodges as well. Would you even use the Jetpack for perfect dashes? Why would you undermine dash attacks by letting the effects of your perks proc from regular sprinting attacks? The next perk is Act of Attrition. This has been changed in patch 11 to now apply a 25% damage taken debuff for 5 seconds. This is usable but limited. It's not great, but not terrible. It's not great because perfect blocks and parries already apply a 50% damage taken debuff for half the time, for about 2.2 to 2.4 seconds. It's not terrible because you can apply this 25% damage taken debuff from regular sprinting attacks, which means you don't have to spend a charge to apply this effect. Again, undermining the wanted adoption of dashing attacks by the developers. A side note here is, in theory, you could stack both debuffs from your parries, blocks, and also the sprinting attacks. Aligning the window requires favourable timing though, but there is a theoretical 75% damage taken debuff for about 2 seconds if you time it right. Probably not practical. Overall, Act of Attrition has niche value but does not meaningfully elevate the dash attack, as again you can proc this from regular sprinting attacks. It's just undermining the drive for dash attacks. And I don't get why this was drafted up in the design work at all. The emphasis on dash attacks should be just that, dash attacks and dash attacks alone. The assault specific extension of sprinting attacks must not follow the same reliance on class perks like Jetpack dashing does for the mechanic itself to have any substance or weight. The inclusion of sprinting attacks with the perks that affect dash attacks are detrimental to dash attacks themselves, and thus I argue that this weird focus on sprinting attacks to be buffed should instead just be dropped. They are already quite good for proccing gun strikes on Minoris and entering into heavy attacks. The dash attack itself, mechanically, needs a complete and utter rework. There should be a clear, player-driven choice to use the dash instead of a ground pound, rather than the attack in its current form just having a slightly improved animation that offers no inherent advantages and only marginal benefits with perks. For me, this means improving the dash attack to have something going for it which ground pounds do not provide. And since ground pounds provide hefty AoE damage, while dash attacks are single target, the dash attack should offer something unique that isn't purely damage based. By doing this, the comparison between the two can be removed and replaced with a clearer distinction. Ground pounds offering strong damage output, while dash attacks offer utility. At a mechanical level, the dash attack is essentially the assault specific extension of sprinting attacks, and as such it should follow the same basic outcome as a sprinting attack, but amplified by the fact we are spending a full charge to dump an entire jetpack's worth of promethium into that strike. The regular sprinting attack can stagger any staggerable enemy, Majoris and Extremis, Terminus not included. If they are not already in an attack stance, they can be staggered, or if they are within the first few frames of winding up, they can also be interrupted. However, it cannot stagger a staggerable enemy that's already committed to its attack. So, to improve upon this, the dash attack should fix this at a fundamental level and, more importantly, without perks. When performed, the dash attack should apply high poise damage to stagger or interrupt enemies regardless of stance, much like block weapons with 2 block stacks can, or the Bulwark's shield rush attack. That would make sense, right? But we can take this further. Considering we're spending an entire charge to perform the attack, there needs to be a clear, meaningful distinction between the raw damage focus of ground pounds and the utility that I'm proposing for dash attacks. The cleanest solution is for this stagger stroke interrupt to effectively concuss enemies for noticeably longer than a standard stagger. Normally that's what? Around 2 seconds? Well, perhaps the dash attack can make it 4. Imagine you are playing cricket with your mates and the bowler hurls the ball straight at your face. You'd be stunned, wouldn't you? You'd be seeing stars. Now apply the same line of thinking, but imagine that cricket ball is an 8-foot tall demi-human in power armor, rushing towards you with the assistance of a Prometheum-fueled jetpack and driving the hilt of his thunderhammer into your face. Now in that scenario, as you are only human, you'd be obliterated into smithereens and giblets, but a Tyranid warrior, which in lore is in many ways superior to the regular space marine, or a rubric marine, itself comparable to a marine, but arguably stronger in some regards thanks to warp influence, would at the very least reel and recoil from the impact of being hit with such force and speed, and therefore end up being stunned and concussed. You are not using this ability for base damage, as that's the ground pound territory. You are using the dash attack so that pack of Devourers gets blasted back and stunned for 4 seconds, giving you and your team time to tear them apart. That pesky Biovore jogging laps around the map, you could dash attack into it, knock it unconscious for 4 seconds, and spend more time killing it, and less time running around the map, dodging spore mines. The god-awful ranged Thousand Suns Terminator launching rockets across the map at you, dash attack into him, stun him, concuss him for 4 seconds so he's unable to attack or retaliate for that duration, so that your team can spend time taking it out. You're spending an ability charge for utility, remember, not for damage. Using your jetpack for something other than ground pounds. Using your ability charge for a tangible, thematically appropriate benefit baked directly into the mechanic itself, not included or provided by a perk. The player autonomy of my suggestion here for the concussion effect doesn't stop there, because remember, you are spending a charge to dash attack into engagement, which means no way to restore that charge spent. However, if you pair it with the existing perk commitment and within either a full or hybrid dash build for assault, you can restore it via the reactive dodge into proactive dash combo, so with commitment, as I had mentioned earlier. This lets you, in a swarm situation with multiple Majoris, Extremis, etc., to jetpack dodge and dash attack one warrior, for example, to knock them out, which would reduce pressure on you and allow you to control the fight. Either you focus the others, or you pile into the knocked out one to finish them off. The charge cycles with commitment, letting you chain these decisions mid-fight. Or alternatively, you spend the full charge outright with a dash attack to shut down a serious or annoying threat more efficiently than a raw ground pound ever could, at the cost of that precious full charge. Forces you to weigh your jetpack options rather than defaulting to, I'll just ground pound that threat. This creates more options. You spend your charge to dash into an annoying Biovore and knock them out. Do you retain that charge and bait the Biovore to attack you so you can dash, proc your dash perks and dash attack into it to then knock it out, and also restoring a charge that way? Do you perhaps get 2 block stacks from the Biovore's attack and just ground pound them and don't even think about the utility aspect of the dash attack? Do you combine them? There's more options here rather than just, oh, I'll just ground pound that Biovore. This line of thinking is far more impactful to the assault combat and jetpack usage conversation than the current implementation, where dash attacks deal 1x base damage, so the same damage as a light swing that doesn't cost a charge at all. In fact, chaining a sprinting attack into a heavy ground slam is a 3x multiplier, and an uncharged aftershock is a 2x. So it's better than spending a full charge to use these attacks in the current state of the game. What I am positing here is that the dash attack should not be framed as a damage dealer, because ground pounds already fill that role. The dash attack instead should be given a unique bit of utility which adds to the assault's kit and creates proper decision making for the player between spending a charge to ground pound and deal damage, are using dash attacks to knock out key threats. Most importantly is that my suggestion of Concussion must be baked into the dash attack mechanic and not something which toggling on a perk would give you, like the suite of perks for Assault's Jetpack dodges. It must not follow the same trajectory. Assault-specific extensions of regular base mechanics should not be the same as the regular base mechanic, considering you're spending a full charge to do it. And if it's not quite clear by now, I also believe that the Jetpack dodge mechanic needs drastic improvement too. It needs to have something going for it at a base level for players to be incentivized to chase that action without having to wait until they hit certain level milestones to make it meaningful. Again, perks should elevate the base mechanics so that players have options to expand and explore it in different ways. It should not be the case that perks are used to flesh out a mechanic which has nothing going for it to begin with. Since we are talking about perks, the Winged Fury perk could also do with an Overhaul. Currently it will not be chosen when options like Overcharge and Armoured Reinforcement exist in the same column. In fact, since the start of the game's life cycle, this perk has seen so many changes. It used to have a very pitiful, I want to say 20 or 40% extra damage on your dash attacks and sprinting attacks, which is pitiful. It's not going to provide any substantial amount of damage. This was then increased and then increased again, and I can't recount how many times it has been changed, but in its current state in patch 11 it's a 100% increase to sprinting and dash attack damage values. The only real benefit to take this perk is with the Power Axe, as the Power Axe has an attack called Overhead Strike, which deals quite a lot of damage if you set it up so in its weapon perk slots, which is then amplified by 100%, so you're actually getting more benefit from the double damage value from Winged Fury. But for everything else, every other weapon, it's not useful at all. The changes I would make first and foremost is for anything that procs off sprinting attack to just be removed. Sprinting attacks are a fundamental combat tactic and should not be undermined by AoE effects, nor should they dilute the intended emphasis on dash attacks. Mixing the two only muddies the design and weakens both mechanics. Secondly, if dash attacks are positioned around utility, as I'm suggesting, rather than raw damage, then Winged Fury is the ideal perk to perhaps introduce meaningful damage for players who actively want to pursue dash attacks. And I'm not talking about a token increase, certainly not a mediocre 20 points of damage in a small radius. Instead, we could take inspiration from Bulwark's Intimidating Aura. Why? Because Intimidating Aura rewards Bulwark's defensive tank-oriented playstyle by triggering what is effectively a frag grenade's worth of damage every 5 seconds through perfect parries or blocks. So Winged Fury could act as the offensive, proactive counterpart, rewarding proactive aggressive play and giving our assault players a clear option to significantly enhance their dash attack's damage potential, on top of that baked-in concussion utility. If we have this concussive effect added in, then the other perk, Act of Attrition, would be fine as it is. Given that I'm proposing dash attacks to concuss and knock enemies unconscious for 4 seconds, having a perk which allows the player and the team to deal more damage thanks to the damage taken debuff of Act of Attrition, that would just naturally accelerate the process. It fits cleanly with this intended flow. It's also thematic. You knock something senseless, it's stunned and its guard is down, so it takes increased damage. Thank you for getting this far in the video. I hope that it has been informative and that you agree that dash attacks in its current state are not viable or hold any weight at all in comparison to ground pound attacks. Hopefully you agree with my suggestions for the dash attack to have utility over damage, as ground pounds fulfill that damage action role. If you have your own ideas about how the dash attack can be improved, then please comment on the video below. But more importantly, take to Saber's Ideas Forum to posit your own ideas. I encourage you to do this because, much like Thorn's suggestions, which were seen by the developers and have hopefully raised this attention of how dash attacks and dashing in general are quite lackluster, the more of us who present our own ideas, and the more of us who show that we are unhappy with Assault in its current state, it could potentially be likely that they'll either adopt one of our ideas or come up with a solution of their own. Hopefully not one as pitiful as the current rendition of dash attacks. They are right that Assault is a strong class, but it's strong in the context of ground pounds and when considered in isolation. When we look at Assault in comparison to all of the other classes and what they have going for it, armor economy, health restoration, great damage output, cyclical loops of their ability charges, you can see that Assault doesn't really hold much ground there. It's a great, strong class, nonetheless, but there is so much more that can be done to make it feel a lot more fun and a lot less restrictive than it is now. So this is the end of the video. Thank you for your time. I hope you have a great day. There's not much left now of this ballistic absolute solo operation with the block power rack, so I'll leave that to play out to its end. But thanks once again, and have a great time on the battlefield, brothers.
Brace for shockwave.